For $3,000 my father sold me to a CEO to pay his debt. What happened at dawn will shock you. Hello, my beautiful family. Welcome back to our one and only channel, a sacred space where we share stories that touch the heart and stir the soul. Oh, how I've missed you all. How have you been since our last story together? I truly hope life has been kind and generous to you. Each day away from you felt like forever, and words can't capture the joy I feel being back here with you today. The bond we share through these stories is something I treasure deeply. Your presence here isn't just appreciated, it means everything to me. Now, before we dive into today's tale, let's take a moment for something truly special, a heartfelt prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you with a heart full of gratitude for every single member of this family. Lord, bless my daughter, our wonderful viewers, our loyal supporters, and everyone who finds comfort, joy, and love in this space. Whatever they may be facing today, Father, lift them up. Fill their hearts with peace, their minds with wisdom, and their lives with overflowing joy. May their dreams blossom into reality. May their struggles turn into triumphs. And may they always feel surrounded by love, divine and human. My dear family, I owe you an apology for the silence these past days. The truth is, I've been unwell. Stress and a lack of proper sleep took a toll on me, and my doctor advised I take a complete day off to rest and recover. Even during that time away, you were always in my thoughts. Every single moment, I found myself longing to share another story with you, to feel that beautiful connection we've built here. Being back with you now feels like returning home. There's a special kind of warmth that fills my heart when I tell these tales of love, redemption, and faith. It's a feeling nothing else in this world can replace. Your patience and understanding mean more to me than words can say. And today, as I return, healing, hopeful, and ready, I ask for a small favor. If you can please say a little prayer for me. Your kind words and heartfelt wishes give me strength. Even a simple, "get well soon," in the comments would mean the world and warm my heart more than you know. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Your continued support through every like, comment, share, and subscription has been my motivation through it all. While I rested, my daughter, who is also a loving supporter of this channel, kept me company by reading your beautiful reactions and thoughtful comments aloud. Each one touched me deeply and reminded me why I began this journey in the first place. This isn't just a channel. It's a family. It's a circle of hearts beating together through stories that speak to the soul. Please keep supporting this beautiful family we've built. It's your love that breathes life into these words and transforms them into something extraordinary, something we share and feel together. Thank you for being here. Now let's dive into another unforgettable story. The morning after her father's devastating confession, Alina sat frozen on her bed, her small suitcase packed beside her. A black luxury car waited outside their dilapidated apartment building, a stark contrast to the crumbling surroundings. Her father couldn't even look her in the eyes as he mumbled, "It's time." $3,000. The amount seemed to echo in her mind with each step toward the car. Less than a month's rent in the better parts of the city. That's what her freedom was worth to the man who was supposed to protect her. The driver, a stone-faced man in a crisp suit, opened the car door without a word. Alina cast one final glance at her father, who stood in the doorway, his shoulders slumped with shame, or perhaps just relief that his debt collectors would no longer be hunting him. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Elias finally met her gaze, his bloodshot eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mr. Kane said that would be up to you eventually." "I'm sorry, Alina. I had no choice. But they both knew that wasn't true. There were always choices. He'd simply made the wrong ones again and again, until his daughter became the final bargaining chip. The drive to Victor Kane's estate took nearly 2 hours, leaving the crowded city behind for the secluded hills where the truly wealthy resided. Alina watched the scenery change from urban decay to manicured landscapes, each mile taking her further from everything she'd ever known. When the gates to Kane's property swung open, Alina's stomach tightened. The mansion loomed ahead, massive, imposing, cold. It wasn't just a home, it was a fortress designed to keep the world out, or perhaps, she thought with growing dread, to keep people in. The car pulled to a stop at the grand entrance. Before the driver could open her door, it swung open from the outside. A tall man with immaculate posture stood waiting. "Ms. Alina," he said with a slight bow. "I'm Marshall, Mr. Kane's house manager. He's expecting you in his study." Following Marshall through the mansion felt like walking through a museum after hours. Everything pristine, valuable, and utterly untouchable. Alina clutched her worn suitcase tighter, acutely aware of how out of place she was among the marble floors and priceless artwork. Marshall knocked on a heavy wooden door, and a deep voice responded, "Enter." Victor Kane didn't bother to stand when Alina walked in. He remained seated behind an enormous desk, his attention fixed on the documents before him. He was younger than she expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with sharp features that might have been handsome if not for the coldness in his gray eyes. "Sir, Ms. Alina has arrived," Marshall announced before quietly withdrawing, closing the door behind him. For several agonizing moments, Kane continued to read as if she weren't even there. Finally, he looked up, his gaze assessing her with clinical detachment. "Your father showed me pictures, but they didn't do you justice," he said, his voice carrying no warmth despite the words. "Welcome to your new home, Alina." "This isn't my home," she replied, summoning courage she didn't know she possessed. "Why did you buy me? What do you want?" A flicker of something, amusement perhaps, crossed his face. Direct. "I appreciate that." He stood, revealing his imposing height. "What I want is quite simple. Companionship on my terms. Your father owed dangerous people a substantial amount of money. I've handled that situation. In exchange, you'll live here and accompany me when required." "As what? Your prisoner? Your slave?" Alina demanded, her voice trembling despite her efforts to appear strong. Kane's expression hardened. "As my companion. You'll have your own room, access to most of the house and grounds, and an allowance. You'll want for nothing material. In return, you'll be available when I need you, for events, dinners, conversations. And if I refuse?" "You won't," he stated simply. "The agreement is binding. Your father ensured that. Besides, where would you go? Your apartment lease has been terminated, your belongings moved here, and your father has relocated to avoid his other creditors. You have nowhere else." The calculated precision with which he'd dismantled her life hit Alina like a physical blow. "This situation is temporary," Kane continued, his tone softening slightly. "Cooperate, and in time, perhaps we can renegotiate the terms. Please pause and take a moment to ask yourself, what would you do in Alina's situation? Would you fight back or try to adapt? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We all want to hear your thoughts and opinion." Marshall reappeared to show Alina to her room, a beautiful prison cell with silk sheets and a bathroom larger than her former apartment. The bay windows offered a stunning view of the gardens, but Alina quickly discovered they were locked, as was her bedroom door each night. During those first days she barely saw Kane. She explored the permitted areas of the mansion, always aware of security cameras tracking her movements. The staff treated her politely but distantly, clearly instructed not to become friendly. On the fourth night, Marshall delivered a package to her room, an elegant black dress with accompanying accessories and a note. Dinner. 8 p.m. Wear this. It wasn't a request. As Alina slipped into the dress, she caught her reflection in the mirror and hardly recognized herself. Behind the expensive fabric and carefully applied makeup lurked a terrified young woman playing a role she never auditioned for. At exactly 8 p.m., she descended the grand staircase to find Victor Kane waiting at the bottom, watching her with those inscrutable gray eyes. The game had begun. The dining room gleamed with understated luxury, crystal chandeliers, hand-painted china, and silverware that probably cost more than a semester of the college education Alina had once dreamed of. Victor Kane sat at the head of a table designed for 20, with Alina placed at his right hand, close enough to converse but separated by an invisible barrier of power and control. "You look appropriate," he said, his eyes briefly scanning her appearance before signaling to the staff. Immediately, servers appeared with the first course. Alina stared at the elaborate arrangement of food, her appetite non-existent. "Why am I here? Really?" Victor took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim of his glass. Directness again. "Most people who meet me are too afraid to ask real questions." "I'm not most people," Alina replied. "Most people aren't purchased." A flash of something, was it respect, crossed his face. "Fair point. You're here because I require someone who can accompany me to social functions without the complications of dating or relationships. Someone who understands boundaries and follows rules. And you couldn't find someone willing? Willing people have expectations. They want love, marriage, a piece of my fortune. They want to change me." His expression hardened. "I don't need changing. I need simplicity." Alina pushed her food around the plate. "There's nothing simple about buying a person. On the contrary, it's the most straightforward arrangement possible. Everything is laid out in clear terms." He set down his fork. "Speaking of which, let's establish the rules." The rules were meticulous and numerous. Alina would have access to the east wing of the mansion, the gardens but not beyond the perimeter fence, and the library. She would have a weekly allowance, a personal shopper, and could request almost any material item she needed. She would be expected to join Victor for dinner 3 times weekly and accompany him to events when required. Physical boundaries were explicitly stated. Victor would not enter her bedroom. She would not enter his private quarters. They would maintain appropriate appearances in public, including acceptable physical contact limited to his hand on her back, holding her arm, or similar socially expected gestures. "And how long does this arrangement last?" Alina asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "A minimum of 1 year," Victor replied. "After that, we can renegotiate if both parties agree." "And if we don't agree?" Victor's eyes locked with hers. "Then you'll be free to go with enough financial support to establish yourself elsewhere." "I'm not a monster, Alina. This is a business arrangement, not a life sentence." But it felt like one. As the weeks passed, Alina adjusted to her gilded cage. She spent her days exploring the library, walking the gardens, and occasionally swimming in the indoor pool. Victor remained distant, joining her for the scheduled dinners but rarely engaging beyond surface conversations. Until the night of the thunderstorm. Alina had always hated storms. In their tiny apartment, her father would sit with her during bad weather, telling stories to drown out the thunder. But in the vast mansion, each thunderclap echoed through the halls like a physical presence. Unable to sleep, she made her way to the library, seeking comfort in books. She didn't expect to find Victor there, seated in a leather chair, a glass of whiskey in one hand and a worn photograph in the other. He looked up, surprised. "You should be in bed." "I don't like storms," she admitted, hovering in the doorway. For a moment she thought he might dismiss her. Instead, he gestured to the chair opposite his. "Neither do I." It was the first personal information he'd voluntarily shared. Alina sat, noticing how the normally composed CEO looked almost vulnerable in the dim light. "Who is she?" Alina asked, nodding toward the photograph he quickly tucked away. Victor's jaw tightened. "Someone I lost." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." He finished his whiskey in one swallow. "Why do you fear storms?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her why, not even her father. "My mother died during a storm," she said quietly. "Car accident when I was 6. I remember waiting by the window for her to come home, watching the lightning, not knowing she never would." Victor studied her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Then, unexpectedly, he shared his own truth. "My parents died in a house fire when I was 12. It was raining that night, not a storm, just steady rain. I was at a friend's house. Sometimes I think if I'd been home." He stopped abruptly, as if suddenly remembering who he was speaking to. "We should both get some rest," he said, his voice returning to its usual controlled tone. But something had shifted between them. The next morning, Alina found a stack of books outside her door, all adventure stories set in sunny, dry climates. There was no note, but the message was clear enough. The following week, Victor's business rival, Adrian Black, appeared at the mansion unannounced. Alina overheard their heated conversation from the hallway. "Buying companionship now, Victor? How desperate you've become," Adrian taunted. "What would the board think if they knew how their CEO acquires his dates?" "Be careful, Adrian." Victor's voice was dangerously calm. "Throwing accusations about my personal life won't help your failing company." "We'll see about that." "The girl looks young. Are you sure everything about your arrangement is legal? Journalists would love that story." Alina stepped into the room, heart pounding. "I'm 22, fully consenting, and Mr. Kane has been nothing but respectful. Would you like me to sign an affidavit stating that?" Both men turned, shocked by her interruption. Victor's expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps even gratitude. Adrian recovered quickly. "Trained her well, I see. This isn't over, Victor." He brushed past Alina, whispering as he passed, "Whatever he's paying you, I'll double it." After he left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. "You didn't have to do that," Victor finally said. "I know," Alina replied. "But he was wrong about you." "Was he?" Victor asked, his voice unusually quiet. The question hung between them, challenging them both to examine what was slowly changing in their strange arrangement. After the confrontation with Adrian Black, something fundamental changed in the dynamics between Alina and Victor. The rigid schedule loosened. Victor began inviting her to join him in his home office while he worked, claiming he thought better with someone else in the room. Alina noticed how he would glance at her when he thought she wasn't looking, not with the cold assessment of their early days, but with curiosity. One evening as they sat in the library, now an unofficial nightly ritual during storms, Victor asked, "What would you be doing if you weren't here?" Alina looked up from her book, surprised by the personal question. "I'd be finishing college. I was studying business and marketing before." Her voice trailed off. "Before your father's debts became yours to pay," Victor finished. His expression softened slightly. "What would you do with that degree?" "Start my own business. Something small at first. A boutique marketing agency for local businesses who can't afford the big firms." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "Admirable. Not everyone thinks about the underserved market." The conversation shifted, and for hours they discussed business strategies, market gaps, and entrepreneurial challenges. For the first time, Victor spoke to her as an equal, someone with valuable thoughts and insights. The next day, a laptop appeared in her room, loaded with business software and online courses from top universities. Another gift without a note, but this one felt different, less like a distraction and more like an investment in her future. As weeks passed, Alina found herself genuinely looking forward to their evenings together. She began challenging Victor's ideas, pushing back against his sometimes cynical worldview. To her surprise, he seemed to appreciate her perspective rather than resent it. "Most people just agree with whatever I say," he admitted one night. "It's refreshing to have someone who isn't afraid to tell me I'm wrong." "Is that why you bought me? To have someone who isn't afraid of you?" The question hung in the air, heavier than she'd intended. Victor's eyes met hers. "I didn't realize that's what I needed until you arrived." Their growing connection didn't go unnoticed. Marshall began giving Alina knowing looks whenever she asked about Victor's schedule. The house staff, initially distant, warmed to her as they observed how their employer's demeanor softened in her presence. But Adrian Black remained a shadow over their evolving relationship. News reports surfaced questioning Victor's business ethics. Anonymous sources claimed Kane Industries was built on exploitation and dubious deals. Though none mentioned Alina directly, Victor grew increasingly tense, working later hours and taking private calls. One night, Alina woke to raised voices downstairs. Slipping out of bed, she crept to the top of the stairs to listen. "You need to end this arrangement now," a woman's voice insisted. "Adrian has hired private investigators. It's only a matter of time before they discover the truth." "There's nothing illegal about our arrangement, Diana," Victor replied, his voice tight with frustration. "She's an adult who consented to stay here. After her father sold her to you for a pathetic sum. How do you think that will play in the media? You'll lose everything you've built." "I don't care." The words, spoken with such certainty, made Alina's heart skip. "Don't be ridiculous, Victor. Of course you care. Kane Industries is your life." Things change. Alina retreated to her room, mind spinning. Was Victor actually choosing her over his company? Or was this just another manipulation? The next morning, Victor was unusually quiet at breakfast. Finally, he spoke. "We need to discuss our situation. Adrian is becoming a genuine threat." "I heard you talking to Diana last night," Alina admitted. "She's right. You should end our arrangement before it damages your company." Victor looked surprised, then shook his head. "Diana sees everything as a business decision. She's been my attorney for years, but she doesn't understand this situation." "And you do?" Alina challenged. "No," he admitted. "But I know I'm not willing to send you away to protect my reputation." Their conversation was interrupted by Marshall, who entered with an envelope. This just arrived by courier, sir. Marked urgent. Victor opened it, his expression darkening as he read. It seems Adrian Black is accelerating his plans. He's called a press conference for tomorrow morning where he plans to expose the truth about Kane Industries' corrupt foundation. He's going to tell them about me, Alina realized. Yes. Victor placed the letter down. Unless I agree to sell him my technology division at half its value. Then sell it, Alina insisted. Your reputation. I don't negotiate with blackmailers, Victor cut her off. And I don't sacrifice people I care about for business advantages. The admission hung between them, neither fully acknowledging what he'd just revealed. That afternoon, Victor disappeared into his office with his legal team. Hours later, when Alina was beginning to worry, he found her in the garden. I've made arrangements, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Tomorrow morning, before Adrian's press conference, I'm going to announce a full scholarship program for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. The first recipient? You. Alina stared at him. What? As far as the public will know, you're living here as part of an independent living program while completing your education under my mentorship. All legitimate, all documented, backdated. Diana's idea, ironically. You're creating an entire program just to protect me? Victor's facade cracked slightly. I'm creating a program that should have existed years ago, and using it to protect us both. Is that acceptable to you? The way he said us, as if they were partners rather than owner and possession, made Alina's heart race. Something fundamental was shifting between them, something neither had anticipated when this arrangement began. Yes, she said quietly. It's acceptable. As night fell, they stood together on the balcony, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. For the first time, Alina wasn't afraid of the approaching thunder. Victor's announcement of the Kane Foundation Scholarship Program made headlines across the country. With Alina as the face of the initiative, their story transformed overnight from potential scandal to heartwarming philanthropy. Business magazines praised Kane's commitment to education and opportunity. Even Adrian Black temporarily retreated, his planned expose now seeming like petty corporate jealousy. But both Alina and Victor knew better than to believe the danger had passed. He's planning something, Victor said one evening as they reviewed the latest coverage. Adrian never backs down this easily. Alina had grown to recognize the subtle tension in Victor's jaw when he was concerned. What do you think he'll do next? Look for holes in our story. Try to find your father. Dig deeper into the original transaction. He reached across the table, briefly touching her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. Are you prepared for that possibility? That the world might learn I was sold for $3,000? She forced a smile. Not really, but I'm stronger than I was when I arrived here. Victor's expression softened. Yes, you are. Their quiet moment was interrupted by Marshall, who entered with Victor's secure phone. Sir, Miss Diana says it's urgent. Victor excused himself, but Alina could hear his voice rising from the hallway. When he returned, his expression had darkened considerably. Adrian found your father, he said without preamble, and convinced him to talk. Alina felt the blood drain from her face. What did he say? Everything. The gambling debts. The threats. The payment. Adrian recorded it all. Victor paced the room. Diana is trying to get an injunction to prevent publication, but my father confirmed everything, Alina finished, her voice hollow. So much for your scholarship cover story. Victor stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected intensity. I didn't create that program as just a cover story. I meant every word. You deserve that opportunity regardless of how we met. Something in his tone made Alina's heart race. Victor. I need to tell you something, he interrupted. Something I should have explained long ago. He crossed to the bookshelf and removed a small wooden box. From it, he withdrew the photograph Alina had glimpsed months earlier, the one he always kept hidden. This was my sister Nora, he said, handing Alina the photo of a smiling young woman. She died 5 years ago. Alina studied the image, noting the same sharp gray eyes that Victor had. I'm sorry. What happened? Victor's jaw tightened. She fell in love with a man named Robert Grayson. Charming, handsome, and deeply in debt. He manipulated her, isolated her from family, borrowed money he never repaid. When she finally tried to leave him, Victor paused, visibly struggling with the memory. He hurt her badly. She didn't survive. That's horrible, Alina whispered, understanding dawning. Is that why? Why I paid your father's debt and brought you here? Yes. Victor's eyes held hers. When I learned about your situation, all I could see was another young woman being sacrificed for a man's debts. I couldn't save Nora, but I thought I could save you. By buying me? Alina challenged, though her voice lacked its usual edge. By removing you from danger, he corrected. The original plan was to set you up with your own place, an education, a fresh start, completely independent of me. What changed? Victor looked away. I met you. And selfishly, I wanted to keep you close. To protect you personally. At least, that's what I told myself. The admission hung between them, laden with unspoken implications. Please take a moment to reflect. Sometimes the people who seem coldest are the ones carrying the deepest wounds. Has someone's surprising revelation ever changed how you saw them? Share your experience in the comments. And if this emotional journey is touching your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our Love and Twilights family for more powerful stories. Before Alina could respond, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced down and froze. Victor, she said, her voice shaking as she held up the screen. It's trending. The headline was brutal. Kane Industries CEO purchased young woman from indebted father. Exclusive interview with father reveals all. Victor's phone immediately began ringing. Diana, likely with crisis management plans. But he didn't answer it. Instead, he remained focused on Alina. I'm sorry, he said simply. This will get ugly. The next 48 hours passed in a blur. News vans camped outside the estate gates. Social media exploded with speculation, some painting Victor as a predator, others questioning Alina's character. Victor's board of directors called an emergency meeting. Through it all, he refused to issue a statement without Alina's approval. It's your story too, he insisted. Perhaps more yours than mine. On the third morning, as they sat in Victor's office reviewing Diana's latest proposed statement, Marshall entered with a tablet. Sir, you need to see this. It's Mr. Black live on Channel 8. Adrian Black stood outside Kane Industries headquarters, a smug smile on his face as reporters thrust microphones toward him. While everyone focuses on the sensational headlines, they're missing the real story, he was saying. Kane Industries' financial reports show unusual payments to offshore accounts. Payments that coincide with Victor Kane's so-called charitable activities. I believe federal investigators should examine whether these scholarships are actually money laundering operations. Victor's face hardened. He's trying to trigger a federal investigation. If they start digging, they might find the payment to my father, Alina finished, which would confirm the worst interpretation of our arrangement. For the first time since she'd known him, Victor looked uncertain. Diana has a contingency plan. We can transfer you to a private residence abroad until this blows over. You'd be comfortable, continue your education. You want me to run away? Alina asked, stunned. I want you to be safe. From the media, from investigations, from all of it. His voice grew quiet. This was never what I intended for you. Alina stood, anger and hurt mingling in her chest. So after everything, you're still making decisions about my life without consulting me? Still treating me like something you purchased? That's not. Then what is it, Victor? Because it sounds like you're trying to hide me away rather than stand beside me. The challenge hung between them, a turning point neither had anticipated. Victor's response would determine everything that followed, for both of them. Victor stared at Alina, her words hanging between them like a physical barrier. His usual composed expression faltered, revealing something raw and unfamiliar. You're right, he finally said, his voice quiet. I'm still trying to control the situation. To control you. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of vulnerability. Old habits. I'm not something you need to manage, Victor. I never was. I know that. He moved toward the window, looking out at the media circus beyond the gates. But this situation, it's my fault. I thought I was protecting you, but I've only complicated your life. Now you're caught in a public scandal that could follow you forever. Alina joined him at the window. Do you regret it? Bringing me here? Victor turned to her, his gray eyes intense. Not for a second. But I regret how it began. The transaction. The rules. Treating you like property, she finished. Yes. He hesitated before continuing. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, Alina. After Nora died, I promised myself I wouldn't care about anyone that deeply again. It was easier to keep people at a distance. Employees, business partners, even the few women I dated. No one got close enough to matter. And now I find myself caring more about your happiness than my company's stock price. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It's terrifying. Alina felt her heart quickening. So what do we do about Adrian, the media, all of it? What do you want to do? Victor asked, and this time it wasn't rhetorical. He genuinely wanted her answer. Alina thought for a moment. I want to stop hiding. I want to tell our story, the true story, not Adrian's version. And I want to face whatever comes next, together. Victor studied her face as if searching for doubt. Finding none, he nodded slowly. Together then. That evening they sat with Diana and the crisis management team, crafting a statement. Victor insisted that Alina have equal input, overriding Diana's objections that she wasn't qualified in public relations. She's qualified to tell her own story, Victor said firmly. And that's what we're doing. By midnight they had their plan. Rather than a written statement or controlled press conference, they would do a live, unedited interview with a respected journalist. No pre-approved questions, no safety net. They would answer honestly about how their arrangement began and how it had evolved. This is incredibly risky, Diana warned. One wrong word could trigger investigations into both of you. It's the right thing to do, Victor replied, his voice steady. As dawn approached, Alina found herself unable to sleep. She slipped out to the garden, watching as the first hints of light touched the eastern sky. The air felt different somehow, cleaner, full of possibility. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Victor, also sleepless, also seeking solitude. "I used to come out here to think when the house felt too empty," he said, joining her on the stone bench. "But lately the house doesn't feel empty anymore." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the darkness gradually yield to light. As the sun crested the horizon, Victor turned to her. "There's something I need to tell you before the interview. Something I should have said months ago." He took a deep breath. "I'm in love with you, Alina. Not as someone I purchased or someone I'm responsible for, but as the woman who brought light back into my life when I thought I'd live in darkness forever." The confession hung in the dawn air between them. "I know the timing is terrible," he continued, "and I don't expect you to." Alina leaned forward and kissed him, cutting off his words. When she pulled back, tears glistened in her eyes. "I love you too. Despite how we began. Despite everything." The moment was interrupted by Marshall, appearing at the garden entrance. "Sir, Miss Diana asked me to inform you that there's been a development. Mr. Elias has arrived at the gate." "My father?" Alina stood, shock washing over her face. "He's here?" Victor's expression hardened. "I'll handle this." "No," Alina touched his arm. "We'll handle it together. Like we agreed." Elias looked haggard and nervous as he was shown into Victor's study. His eyes widened at the sight of Alina standing confidently beside Victor. "Lena, he began, his voice cracking. "Why are you here?" she asked, her tone neutral. "To make things right." Elias pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "Adrian Black paid me to tell my story, but he edited the recording. Cut out the parts that didn't fit his narrative." He placed the drive on the desk. "This is the full interview. I talk about how I've struggled with gambling addiction for years. How you tried to help me countless times. How Victor not only paid my debt but got me into a treatment program." Victor looked surprised. "You completed the program I arranged?" Elias nodded. 6 months sober. First time in 20 years. He turned back to Alina. "I know I can never make up for what I did to you. But I couldn't let them twist this into something it wasn't. Not when you both helped me when no one else would." Alina felt tears gathering. 4 years she'd taken care of her father, cleaned up his messes, forgiven his failures. Now, finally, he was trying to do the same for her. "Thank you," she said simply. After Elias left, they reviewed the full recording. Changed everything. While it didn't erase the uncomfortable beginning of their arrangement, it provided crucial context that Adrian had deliberately omitted. As the interview hour approached, Victor took Alina's hands in his. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know something. You came here as a transaction, but you've become the most valuable person in my life. Not because I purchased you, but because you showed me how to live again." The sun had fully risen now, bathing the room in golden light. A new day. A new beginning. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as owner and possession, but as two people who had found love in the most unexpected circumstances. The interview was set for 7 p.m., prime time. As makeup artists made final touches to both Victor and Alina's appearances, Diana reviewed their key talking points one last time. "Remember, acknowledge the unusual beginning without dwelling on it. Focus on the scholarship program, Alina's education, and the positive transformation. Avoid mentioning specific dollar amounts. Victor nodded absently, his attention fixed on Alina. She wore a simple blue dress, professional yet approachable, her hair pulled back to frame her face. Gone was the frightened girl who had arrived at his mansion months ago. In her place stood a confident young woman preparing to face the world on her own terms. 5 minutes, called the producer. Alina met Victor's gaze. Nervous, terrified, he admitted with a small smile. But not about the interview. She understood. This moment marked a turning point. After tonight, their relationship would be public knowledge, subject to scrutiny and judgment. They were stepping into unknown territory together. Catherine Lawson, the journalist they'd selected for the exclusive, had a reputation for tough but fair reporting. As the cameras began rolling, her first question cut straight to the heart of the matter. Mr. Kane, let's address the headlines directly. Did you pay money to Alina's father in exchange for her companionship? Victor didn't flinch. Yes, I did. I paid off debts that were putting both Alina and her father in danger. What began as an unconventional arrangement has evolved into something neither of us expected. Alina, many would characterize this situation as exploitation. How do you respond to that? Alina sat straighter. I understand why people might see it that way. Had you asked me 6 months ago, I might have agreed. But context matters. My father was in debt to dangerous people. Mr. Kane's intervention removed that threat. But he brought you to live in his home, under his control. Yes. At first there were rules, boundaries. I wasn't a prisoner, but I wasn't entirely free either. Alina glanced at Victor. What neither of us anticipated was how that arrangement would transform as we came to know each other as people, not as parties in a transaction. The interview continued for a full hour, covering everything from Victor's sister Nora, to the scholarship program, to Adrian Black's allegations. Catherine pushed hard on the financial aspects, but Elias's unedited interview, which they had provided to her team beforehand, helped contextualize the situation. When Catherine asked about their current relationship status, Victor took Alina's hand. I fell in love with Alina's strength, her perspective, her ability to see good in a situation that began with none. Our beginning was unusual, even troubling. But what matters more is where we are now and where we're going. And where is that? Catherine asked. Forward, Alina replied simply. Together. As the camera stopped rolling, Catherine approached them off record. That was not what I expected. For what it's worth, I think people will connect with your honesty.
The public reaction proved her right. While some commentators condemned the arrangement's origins, many more responded to the genuine emotion both had displayed. Victor's openness about his sister's tragedy humanized him. Alina's clear-eyed assessment of her situation, acknowledging its problematic beginning while affirming her current agency, resonated particularly with young viewers. The hashtag Alina and Victor trended for days. Support flooded in from unexpected quarters, survivors of domestic violence, addiction counselors, even business ethicists who praised Victor's transparency and efforts to make amends. Most significantly, Adrian Black's campaign against them crumbled. Without the scandal he'd hoped to ignite, his accusations about financial impropriety appeared petty and vindictive. Several board members who had aligned with Adrian now publicly backed Victor. The federal investigation Black had tried to trigger never materialized. 3 weeks after the interview, as the media frenzy finally began to subside, Victor found Alina in the garden, working on her business plan, a project that had evolved from theoretical to imminent. The scholarship program had expanded, with Alina taking a leadership role in its development. She was no longer just its first recipient, she was helping shape its future. "The board meeting went well," Victor announced, joining her on the bench. "Adrian has withdrawn his hostile takeover attempt." "Good." Alina closed her laptop. "Though I'm not sure how much you actually care about that anymore." Victor smiled. "You know me too well. The company matters, but priorities change." He hesitated before continuing. "Speaking of change, there's something I want to discuss with you." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. Alina's eyes widened. "This isn't a proposal," Victor clarified quickly. "Not yet. That would be too soon, given everything we've been through." He opened the box to reveal a key. "What's this?" Alina asked. "The key to your new apartment. It's close to the university, fully furnished, with excellent security." His expression was a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "You said once that I was still treating you like something I purchased. You were right. True love means freedom, not possession." Alina stared at the key. "You want me to leave? I want you to choose. Stay because you want to, not because of our arrangement. Build your life, pursue your education, launch your business, independently. And if that path leads you back to me..." His voice softened. "I'll be here." Tears filled Alina's eyes as she took the key. After months of having decisions made for her, this final choice meant everything. That evening, she packed a small bag, just enough for a few days, and Marshall drove her to the apartment. It was beautiful, thoughtfully designed with touches that showed Victor had paid attention to her preferences. But as she wandered through the empty rooms, something felt missing. 3 days later, as dawn broke over the city, Alina returned to the mansion. She found Victor in the garden, looking as though he hadn't slept since she left. When he saw her, he stood, hope and fear battling in his expression. "I had to know," she explained, moving toward him. "I had to be sure this was my choice. That I wasn't staying out of obligation or habit or because I had nowhere else to go." And his voice was barely audible. Alina smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I choose you. Not because you bought me. Not because you saved me. But because I love who we are together." As the sun rose fully over the horizon, Victor took her in his arms, and they began writing the next chapter of their story, one where neither was owner nor possession, but simply two people who had found love in the most unlikely circumstances. The months following Alina's return transformed the mansion from Victor's isolated fortress into their shared home. The East Wing, once her designated area, became a project they renovated together, breaking down walls both literally and figuratively. Where locked doors once separated their lives, open archways now invited connection. Alina's business plan evolved from concept to reality. With Victor's mentorship, but deliberately without his financial investment, she launched Horizon Marketing, a boutique agency serving small businesses overlooked by larger firms. She insisted on building it with a small business loan rather than Victor's money, determined to succeed or fail on her own merits. "You could make this easier on yourself," Victor observed one night as she worked late on a client proposal. I have connections that would shortcut the journey, she finished with a smile. But the journey is the point, isn't it? Like us. If we'd started normally, met at a coffee shop or a business function, we might not appreciate what we've built together. Victor's expression softened. When did you become so wise? When a certain CEO taught me that true power isn't about control, it's about creating opportunities for others to thrive. She kissed him lightly, even if his methods were questionable at first. Their relationship wasn't without challenges. Though the media frenzy had subsided, they occasionally faced judgment from those who couldn't see beyond their unusual beginning. At business functions, Alina sometimes caught whispers behind concealed hands. At her university, certain professors treated her differently after learning of her connection to Victor Kane. Yet for every person who judged, others found inspiration in their story. The scholarship program expanded, with dozens of recipients pursuing education that would have otherwise remained out of reach. Victor expanded the initiative to include mentorship and housing support, creating genuine pathways for disadvantaged young people. Adrian Black made one final attempt to undermine them. 6 months after the interview, he approached Alina directly when Victor was out of town on business. "He'll grow tired of you," Adrian said, cornering her after one of her classes. "Men like Victor don't change permanently. Eventually, he'll remember he purchased you, and the power imbalance will resurface." Instead of retreating, Alina faced him calmly. "You misunderstand our relationship entirely, Mr. Black. Victor didn't change for me. He remembered who he truly was before grief and isolation hardened him. And I'm not with him because of what he did for me. I'm with him because of who we become together." Adrian's calculated attack revealed more about his character than theirs. 2 weeks later, his company's board removed him as CEO following allegations of financial misconduct. Victor offered no public comment, but privately donated to the legal fund supporting former employees who had reported Adrian's violations. As their 1-year anniversary approached, not of their first meeting, but of Alina's choice to return, Victor grew uncharacteristically nervous. Alina noticed him taking private calls, ending conversations abruptly when she entered rooms, and conferring with Marshall about mysterious arrangements. "Are you planning something?" she asked one evening. "Planning," Victor repeated, his expression too innocent to be believable. "Why would you think that?" The mystery resolved itself on a crisp autumn morning when Victor woke her before dawn. "Get dressed," he said, excitement visible in his usually composed features. "I want to show you something." He drove them himself, refusing to answer her questions about their destination. After nearly an hour, they turned onto a tree-lined road leading to a modest but charming house with a wraparound porch and a small garden. A "Sold" sign stood in the front yard. "Victor, what is this?" Alina asked as they parked. He handed her a key. "This is ours, if you want it." Inside, the house was warm and inviting, neither opulent like the mansion nor compact like her apartment. It felt like home. "I thought we could start fresh," Victor explained, watching her reaction carefully. "Somewhere that belongs to both of us equally. No baggage, no power imbalance, no reminders of how we began." In the kitchen, Alina found framed architectural plans on the wall. "What are these?" "The Future Horizon Marketing Headquarters," Victor said, coming up behind her. "The detached garage converts perfectly to an office space. The property includes enough land for expansion when you outgrow it." Tears filled Alina's eyes as she turned to him. "You really thought of everything." "Not quite everything." Victor took a deep breath before dropping to one knee. "There's one more question I need to ask." The ring he offered was elegant but understated, not a demonstration of wealth but a symbol of commitment. "I don't want to own you, Alina. I want to partner with you, in business, in life, in everything. Will you marry me?" Alina knelt to join him at eye level, cupping his face in her hands. "We've done everything backwards, haven't we? Most couples date, then live together, then get engaged." "We've never been conventional," Victor acknowledged with a smile. "Good. Conventional is overrated." She kissed him deeply before whispering, "Yes." That evening, as they sat on the porch of their new home watching the sunset, Victor's phone buzzed repeatedly with business emergencies demanding attention. For the first time in his career, he powered it off without checking the messages. "They can wait until morning," he said, pulling Alina closer. "Some things are more important." As darkness fell, neither moved to turn on the lights. They remained wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found their way to love through the most unlikely beginning, a journey that proved sometimes the worst decisions can lead to the best outcomes if you're brave enough to transform them. The next chapter of their story was about to begin. Not as a man who had once bought a woman's freedom, nor as a woman who had once been sold, but as equals who had chosen each other, freely and completely, against all odds. Their wedding was nothing like anyone expected from Victor Kane, CEO of a billion-dollar empire. No lavish hotel ballroom, no hundreds of business associates and social climbers. Instead, they married in the garden of their new home, surrounded by only those who truly mattered to them. Alina wore a simple white dress that caught the spring breeze. Victor abandoned his customary formal suits for something more relaxed, looking younger and more carefree than his employees would have recognized. Marshall served as best man, his usual stoic demeanor cracking with genuine emotion when the couple exchanged vows. Among the small gathering sat Elias, 1 year sober and hesitant in his newly pressed suit. When Victor had delivered the invitation personally, Elias had initially refused. "I don't deserve to be there," he'd said. "Not after what I did." "You're her father," Victor had replied simply. "And we're building a future, not dwelling in the past." Now, watching his daughter marry the man to whom he had once sold her, Elias wept openly, tears of shame transformed into gratitude for second chances. Diana attended too, her legal mind still struggling to comprehend how the most questionable contract she'd ever drafted had somehow resulted in authentic love. During the reception, she pulled Alina aside. "When Victor first told me his plan to buy someone's debt in exchange for companionship, I nearly quit," she admitted. "I thought he'd lost his mind." "And now?" Alina asked, curious. Diana smiled. "Now I believe some contracts are meant to be broken and rewritten." Horizon Marketing flourished under Alina's leadership. She hired other scholarship recipients, creating opportunities that mirrored the second chance she'd received. By their first anniversary, her client list had quadrupled, and she'd opened a second office in a neighboring city. Victor supported her success without overshadowing it. When investors learned of their connection and sought meetings with Alina hoping to access Victor's influence, he deliberately stayed away, allowing her to stand on her own merits. "They try to use me to get to you," Alina observed after one such meeting. Victor laughed. "Little do they know you're the real power player in this family. I just move money around. You actually change people's lives." Their partnership extended beyond their personal relationship. The Kane Foundation expanded its mission, with Alina taking the lead on educational initiatives while Victor focused on housing and employment opportunities for graduates. What had begun as a cover story transformed into their shared passion. Is there someone in your life who brings out the best version of yourself? Tag them in the comments to let them know how much they mean to you. And if this journey of transformation has touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button on Love and Twilights and turn on notifications so you never miss our next captivating story. One autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted onto their porch, a black town car pulled into their driveway. Marshall emerged, now officially retired but still handling personal matters for the couple. "Ms. Diana asked me to deliver this personally," he said, handing Victor a thick envelope. "The court's final ruling." Inside was confirmation that Adrian Black had been sentenced to 5 years for securities fraud and embezzlement. His attempt to destroy Victor had ultimately exposed his own corruption. "Do you feel vindicated?" Alina asked as they reviewed the documents. Victor considered the question. "No. I feel free. His obsession with destroying me consumed him. I'm just grateful it didn't consume us." That evening, a surprise visitor arrived, Nora's former fiancé Robert, the man whose abuse had led to her death. Now pale and gaunt after serving his prison sentence, he stood nervously at their door. "I know I have no right to be here," he began. "But I needed to tell you I'm sorry. Not that it changes anything." Victor's face hardened, old pain surfacing. "Why now?" "I've been in recovery. Making amends is part of the process." Robert's eyes dropped to the ground. "When I saw your story in the media, how you saved Alina from a situation that could have become like Nora's, I realized you transformed your grief into something meaningful." "I haven't." Alina watched her husband carefully, seeing the battle within him. Finally, Victor spoke. "Nora would have wanted me to say this. I hope you find peace, Robert. Not for your sake, but for hers. Now please leave." After Robert departed, Alina held Victor as years of suppressed grief finally broke free. "You didn't forgive him," she observed. "No," Victor acknowledged. "But I'm not letting him haunt us anymore. That's its own kind of freedom." 2 years to the day after Victor had presented Alina with the key to her apartment, the moment he had given her true choice, they stood together in the hospital, looking through the nursery window at their newborn daughter. "She's perfect," Victor whispered, all evident in his voice. "What should we name her?" Alina asked. Victor's eyes glistened. "I was thinking, Dawn." Alina smiled, understanding the significance. "Dawn. Because that's when everything changed for us. The morning I realized I had to let you go to truly have you," Victor agreed. "The moment we both chose freedom and found each other anyway." Little Dawn Kane would grow up hearing a carefully edited version of her parents' unusual beginning. She would know that her grandfather Elias made serious mistakes but found redemption. She would understand that her father once built walls to protect himself, but learned that connection was worth the risk of pain. And she would learn from her mother that true strength comes not from avoiding difficult circumstances, but from transforming them. As they brought their daughter home, the rising sun cast long rays across their front porch. Victor paused, baby Dawn in his arms, and looked at Alina. $3,000, he said softly. What? Alina asked. Your father sold you for $3,000. Victor looked down at their daughter. It was the best investment anyone has ever made, because it led to this, to us. Alina leaned against him, watching the sunrise illuminate their home. From the darkest beginning came the brightest future. They stood together in the growing light, 3 lives connected by a story that began with a transaction but transformed into something money could never buy. A family built on choice, respect, and love that had overcome the most unlikely beginning. And as dawn broke fully over their home, they stepped inside to begin the next chapter of their extraordinary journey, together. 5 years passed. Dawn grew from a curious toddler into a spirited kindergartner with Victor's analytical mind and Alina's compassionate heart. Their home, once new and pristine, now bore the beautiful marks of family life. Crayon masterpieces on the refrigerator, a swing set in the backyard, and photographs chronicling their journey together. Horizon Marketing had become the premier boutique agency in the region, with Alina frequently speaking at business conferences about ethical entrepreneurship. Victor had stepped back from daily operations at Kane Industries, focusing instead on mentoring the next generation of business leaders through the foundation. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves carpeted their yard, Alina found Victor in his home office, reviewing a familiar document. "What's that?" she asked, though she already knew. "The original contract," Victor said quietly. "The one that brought you to me." Alina sat beside him, studying the paper that had once dictated her life. The legal language felt cold, clinical, nothing like the warm reality they had created together. "Why are you looking at this?" she asked. Victor smiled. 5 years ago today, I bought someone's daughter for $3,000. On paper, it was the most morally questionable thing I've ever done. He took her hand. Yet somehow, it led to the most meaningful life I could imagine. "We should burn it," Alina suggested. "Leave the past in the past." Victor shook his head. "I thought about that. But then I realized we shouldn't erase our beginning, no matter how unusual. It's part of our story." Later that day, as Dawn napped, they walked to the garden where they had exchanged their vows. Victor carried a small wooden box, the same one that had once contained Nora's photograph. "I had something made for you," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate gold compass pendant. "It's beautiful," Alina said as he fastened it around her neck. "Look inside." Engraved within the compass was a simple message, "From transaction to transformation." "To remind us both that where we begin isn't where we have to end," Victor explained, "and that sometimes the wrong paths can lead to the right destination." That evening, as they prepared dinner, a news alert flashed on Victor's phone. Adrian Black had been released from prison. The notification might once have triggered anxiety, but now it barely registered as important. "Do you think he'll try to cause trouble again?" Alina asked. Victor shook his head. "I doubt it. But even if he does, we're stronger than any challenge he could present. His confidence wasn't arrogance, but the calm certainty of someone who had faced his worst fears and emerged stronger. The man who had once controlled everything around him had learned to embrace life's unpredictability. Life has a fascinating way of bringing us full circle, doesn't it? Have you ever had a moment when you looked back and realized how far you've come? Share your journey in the comments. 2 weeks later, Alina received an unexpected call from the foundation office. A young woman named Maya had applied for the scholarship program with an unusual story. Her father had attempted to use her as collateral for a loan with a predatory lender. "She reminds me of you," Diana explained over the phone. "Her application essay specifically mentions your story as inspiration. She refused to be a victim and found a way out." "I want to meet her," Alina decided. The meeting was arranged at Horizon's headquarters. Maya arrived punctually, her nervous determination immediately familiar to Alina. "Your story changed my life," Maya admitted as they sat in Alina's office. "When my father tried to use me to secure his loan, I remembered how you turned a terrible situation into something powerful. It gave me courage to leave and make my own way. And now you want to study business?" Alina asked. Maya nodded. "I want to create financial education programs for women from backgrounds like mine, women who've never been taught to manage money or understand their economic worth." As Maya outlined her vision, Alina felt a profound sense of completion. The circle that had begun with her father's desperate choice had led to this moment, another young woman finding her voice and purpose. That night, after sharing Maya's story with Victor, they sat on their porch swing, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if my father hadn't made that deal with you?" Alina asked. Victor considered. "I used to. Now I just feel grateful he did, despite his reasons." Alina leaned against him. "From the worst decision came the best outcome." "Speaking of outcomes," Victor said, his tone shifting to one of excitement, "I got the final approval today. The Dawn Initiative launches next month." The Dawn Initiative, named both for their daughter and for the morning that had changed their relationship, would provide not just education but comprehensive support for young people escaping difficult family situations. Housing, counseling, legal assistance, and career guidance, everything Alina had needed when her father had sold her. "We've come full circle," Alina observed. "From a transaction between two men that treated a woman as property, to a program that will help hundreds of young people claim their own agency." Later that night, as moonlight filtered through their bedroom window, Alina traced the compass pendant at her throat. "From transaction to transformation," she whispered. Victor pulled her closer. "And every step worth taking." In the quiet darkness, the past no longer haunted them. The $3,000 that had once represented Alina's price tag had multiplied into millions dedicated to ensuring no one else would face the choice she had. The man who had purchased her had become the partner who championed her freedom and strength. And the woman who had been sold had transformed into someone who owned her story completely, using it to light the way for others. As dawn approached once more, they slept peacefully in each other's arms, their extraordinary journey a testament to love's power to transform even the darkest beginnings into the brightest futures. The Dawn Initiative had flourished beyond all expectations, helping hundreds of young people escape difficult circumstances and build meaningful futures. Maya, once a scholarship recipient, now served as its director, bringing personal understanding to her leadership role. On a crisp morning in early autumn, Alina woke before sunrise, a habit she had developed over the years. She slipped from bed without waking Victor and made her way to the kitchen to prepare coffee. Through the window, she watched the first hints of light touching the eastern sky. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Victor stood in the doorway, hair now threaded with silver at the temples, his eyes still holding the same intensity when they focused on her. "You're up early," he observed, joining her at the window. "Couldn't sleep. I've been thinking about today's ceremony." The Kane Foundation was opening its 10th branch office, this one dedicated specifically to helping parents struggling with addiction, a tribute to how far Elias had come and an acknowledgement of how addiction had nearly destroyed Alina's life. "Having second thoughts about inviting the media?" Victor asked. Alina shook her head. "No. It's time everyone heard the complete story." For years, they had maintained a careful narrative about their beginning. The scholarship cover story had evolved into a partial truth, with the original transaction fading into background. But today, with Alina's memoir being released simultaneously with the center's opening, the full account would become public. "Are you nervous?" Victor asked, his hand finding hers. "A little, but mostly I feel free. Like the last piece is finally falling into place." They watched in comfortable silence as darkness gradually yielded to light. This daily transformation still held special meaning for them both, a reminder that endings could become beginnings, that darkness could give way to possibilities neither could have imagined. Later that morning, as Alina prepared to address the gathered crowd, she caught sight of a familiar face in the audience. Adrian Black, older and humbled by his fall from grace, sat quietly in the back row. Their eyes met briefly. No animosity, just acknowledgment of the strange path that had connected their lives. When Alina took the podium, the camera lights illuminated her face as she opened her memoir to read the passage she had selected for this moment. "What happened at dawn changed everything. Not just that first morning when Victor offered me freedom, but every dawn that followed, each new day a reminder that our lives are not defined by our worst moments or by the choices others make for us. They are defined by how we respond, by what we build from the broken pieces, by our courage to begin again with the rising sun. My father sold me for $3,000 to pay a debt. That could have been the end of my story, a tragedy, a cautionary tale. Instead, it became the first line of a very different narrative, one about reclaiming power, finding unexpected love, and turning transaction into transformation. As we near the end of this journey together, I'd love to know, what part of Alina and Victor's story resonated with you most deeply? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've been moved by this story of redemption and transformation, please hit that subscribe button and join our Love and Twilights family for more stories that touch your heart. After the ceremony, as guests mingled at the reception, Elias approached Victor privately. "I never properly thanked you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For what?" Victor asked. "For seeing the value in my daughter when I failed to. For turning my worst mistake into her best chance." Elias's eyes were clear and steady, the eyes of a man who had faced his demons and found peace. "You bought her freedom, but you gave her so much more." Victor clasped the older man's shoulder. "She saved me as much as I saved her." maybe more. That evening, after the children were asleep, Alina and Victor returned to their favorite spot on the porch. "I've been thinking," Victor said, his arm around her shoulders, "about that morning. The dawn when I told you that you were free to go. When you gave me the key to the apartment," Alina recalled. "Yes. I was so terrified you wouldn't come back." Alina looked up at him. "You never told me that." Pride. Victor smiled. "I spent those 3 days completely unable to focus. Diana thought I was having a breakdown. Marshall found me sleeping in your room the second night, just to feel close to you. And if I hadn't come back, I would have respected your choice. But I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what might have been." His fingers traced the compass pendant she still wore. "Those were the longest 3 days of my life." "For me too," Alina admitted. "I kept walking around that empty apartment, trying to imagine a life without you. It felt incomplete." As darkness settled around them, they remained on the porch, recounting memories, planning future projects, discussing their children's latest accomplishments. Their conversation flowed with the ease of two people who had weathered storms together and emerged stronger. When Alina finally yawned, Victor stood and offered his hand. "Come to bed. Tomorrow's another day." "Another dawn," she agreed, taking his hand. As they walked inside, Alina paused for one last look at the night sky. In a few hours, darkness would once again yield to light. The cycle that had marked their journey would continue, an endless reminder that transformation was always possible, that love could grow from the most unlikely beginnings, and that sometimes what happened at dawn could change everything. Did this tale of unexpected love touch your heart? Did you see yourself in Alina's resilience or Victor's transformation? Their story reminds us that even our darkest moments can lead to beautiful beginnings if we're brave enough to embrace them. Don't let this be the final chapter of our connection. Transform from viewer to family member by hitting that subscribe button right now. When you do, you're not just following a channel. Drop a comment sharing which moment in Alina and Victor's journey moved you most. Was it the thunderstorm that first connected them? The moment Victor gave Alina true freedom? Or perhaps when they came full circle with the Dawn Initiative? Every sunrise brings new stories waiting to be told. Make sure you don't miss a single one. Turn on notifications and become part of our storytelling sunrise. Because just like Alina discovered, sometimes the most beautiful stories begin at dawn. Remember, from transaction to transformation, from viewer to family, the choice is yours to make. We'll be waiting for you with another captivating story when the sun rises again.